From my perspective, there are basically two distinct ways to fix Amon's character, but to understand what we can change, we first need to talk about what he did well and where he fell short. Amon is the scariest villain in Avatar by far, and he's also the most powerful, more than Sahir or even Comet boosted Ozai himself. Unrestricted bloodbending is simply way too overpowered, and the last Airbender knew that. That is precisely why it only shows up 2 times in the final season of the show. In its introduction in episode 8, the Puppet Master, and then only one more time when Katara used it in episode 16, the Southern Raiders. They also gave it some serious contingencies to only make it useful in very specific situations, with needing the full moon obviously being the most important. And then on top of the bloodbending, they gave Amon the ability to remove bending, something we've only seen the Avatar be able to do before. The second problem with Amon concerns more his writing than his power level. The bending equality movement, the Equalists, was one of the most genius ideas the Avatar writing team ever came up with. Inequality between bender and non-bender was briefly discussed in The Last Airbender, particularly around Sokka, like in Book 3 Episode 4, Sokka's Master, but it was never really focused on, at least not to the scale of society at large, which was totally fine for that show. Sokka is my favorite character partly because he has no bending and is forced to find other ways to be useful. But Korra attempted to be more nuanced in its overarching storylines. No longer was there a war with a clear bad guy to defeat, which I think Korra would have honestly preferred. No, Korra had to face the products of societal inequality and geopolitical imbalance, things we commonly see in real life, things that aren't simple to resolve. The issue with Amon in that context is how after the twist is revealed that he is in fact a waterbender, the Equalist movement just kinda stopped existing. However, just because Amon turned out to be a bender doesn't mean any of the non-benders' concern wasn't justified. They still face inequality, and the show somewhat ignores that after the reveal. So a proper fix to Amon's character would fix these two problems: his stupidly overpowered and magic system breaking bending, as well as how he undermined the very real issues of non-benders that he was supposed to represent. Let's start where starts usually start, with option 1. Our first attempt to fix Amon will be a little more conservative. We would keep the fact that he's a bender, but just make it a little bit more restrictive. I don't mind him being able to bloodbend at any time, even when there's not a full moon. It seems like a logical next step for the technique, that someone inevitably would come along and be able to do it without the help of the full moon. Although limiting his ability to take away bending to only during the full moon could be a great way to apply limitations to Amon. It would be a great weakness as well for our heroes to exploit, and an explanation to why Amon didn't take away Korra's bending when he first had the chance at the statue. Also, it can be used as a clue for the viewer about who Amon truly is behind the mask. During the season, it's a mystery who Amon really is that Team Avatar is trying to solve, and having Amon only take away bending during the full moon could be a hint for us the viewers, but also the gang about who he is. That would give some sort of foreshadowing to the twist and make Amon being a waterbender a little bit more easy to swallow, since currently it's very out of left field. Unfortunately, that would still leave the issue of him turning out to be a bender undermining the Equalist movement. So this option is also very dependent on a strong secondary character that can keep the movement going after his reveal at the end of season 1 and possibly even further into the show. The most obvious choice in my opinion that should have happened in the show in the first place is to have Asami fill that role. The creators admitted themselves that Asami being an Equalist was the original plan for Korra, but they reined that back in favor for her father, Hiroshi Sato. That was clearly a huge mistake in hindsight and inhibited us from a direct emotional connection to the Equalist movement, which would have validated their points and concerns a lot more. Although even with Asami as an Equalist, which I really think should have been the case regardless, having Amon turn out to be another bender robbed us of our first non-bending main villain in the series. So I still think I prefer option 2. My second alternative to rewriting Amon takes a little bit more of a drastic approach, removing his bending entirely. This of course instantly fixes the issue of his power scaling. It also fixes the Equalist problem outright since Amon is no longer a bender. There is no reveal, no twist to undermine it. Some of you might say he'd be too weak, that he wouldn't stand a chance against the Avatar 1 against 1. But I would argue we've seen plenty of non-benders be real threats to skillful benders, so I don't think it's outside the realm of imagination. And strength isn't always the most important thing. Just look at the best villain in the entire show. In my opinion, of course, Sahir, which is maybe the weakest villain we've ever gotten in terms of bending. But he makes up for it and more in other ways. Obviously, this will require a much bigger rewrite than option 1, but it also provides unique opportunities. Even though I'm glad his bloodbending would get removed, I actually quite like the fact that Amon could take away bending, specifically with Korra as our avatar. In season 1, Korra clearly values her bending over basically everything else. Being the avatar is how she defines herself, partly because of just how early she discovered that she was the avatar, but also just her brash, overconfident nature and over-reliance on violence. Having the threat of Amon taking her bending away, aka taking who she is away from her, is such a visceral and powerful aspect of their dynamic that I don't just want to remove. It's a big reason why probably the best scene in the whole season works so well when Amon lures her to the statue of Aang and takes her down easily. Her fear is real and you truly feel it. So therefore I'd love to keep this aspect of the character. And there is a few options available in how we could make that happen. This can definitely come from some sort of spirit-based power. Maybe he was touched by a spirit as a child or chosen, etc, etc. The new Avatar Aang movie just came out and proved that this is a possibility, with spoilers, the staff being able to give and take away airbending. This does fit Korra's fascination and deeper exploration of the spirit world, foreshadowing its focus on them in season 2, aptly named Book 2 Spirits. However, I don't love the idea of including spirits, since it kinda reintroduces the problem of undermining the equalist movement, just in a different way. Another way we could explain his bending removing abilities that I prefer would be through chi blocking. We know from Ty Lee and others that chi blocking can be used to temporarily remove bending, but only for a short while. We could simply have Amon be more powerful with the technique, more skillful, more precise, and that bending removal be more permanent. As a bonus, this would allow a more natural way for Korra to regain her bending over the course of the show, instead of Aang just appearing and Deus Machina the entire situation after maybe 10 minutes of her losing it. She would have to unblock the chi, similar to how Aang did it with Guru Patik, but only a little harder. It would also give a reason why she's so drawn to Unalaq and traditionalism at the start of Book 2, hoping maybe he can help her regain her bending back. In the same way how a lot of people get drawn to religious beliefs when they experience trauma in the real world. If you want to see how this idea unfolds of Korra regaining water, fire and earth more gradually after Book 1, I highly recommend checking out Hello Future Me series on rewriting Korra if you already haven't. And even if you have, go watch it again, it's simply amazing. Well, that's all I got, are two options. One that keeps Amon's bending but limits it slightly, although it preferably needs someone like Azami to become an equalist to fill his role after reveal. Another that takes his bending completely away, but keeps his ability to remove bending, possibly through chi blocking, open up doors for Korra to regain her elements more gradually over the story. However, it is a much larger rewrite of the current Book 1. Tell me down below which option you prefer, and maybe even if you have a third option that you think is even better. In that case, I'd love to read your suggestion. While you're here, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, it really helps out the channel. And yeah, until next time, peace.